Now that we've cut our skirt, we're ready to start fusing the interfacing to the waistband pieces and also sewing our darts. To start fusing, let me take you over to the ironing board. So we have cut previously, this is the back waist piece. So what we want to do is fuse the interfacing to our waistband piece. I've done here previously, so you can see that is the inside or the wrong side, and this is the right side of the fabric that you will see. And having this fused onto there gives stability to the piece, so you don't have a waistband that flops about. So looking at this, I'll just turn this around with the right side. Looking at this, we want to have the opposite side. So this is our right side of the fabric, which we turn around so we can fuse the fusing onto the wrong side. You can see with the fusing, if it is iron-on interfacing, fusing interfacing is an interchangeable word, you will see it has a smooth side, and then it will also have a kind of glossy side where it glitters a little bit, and you can also feel over it and it's a little bit rougher. That is the side that the glue is attached to. So we want to move and put the glue side onto the wrong side of our fabric, lining up the pieces as well as possible. Now it's important to get this right, so double or triple check if you're not 100% sure, because once you put the iron on to attach it, the glue will dissolve, and you don't want to fuse this piece to your iron rather than to your fabric. So then just take your iron, and instead of moving it in a gliding motion where you might shift it and create bubbles, all you want to do is just lower the iron, perhaps somewhere along the middle of the piece, hold it down for a few seconds, and move on to the next spot. And the same thing here. After you've done that, you can move it slightly, just making sure you don't shift it. And if it still doesn't attach, depending on the quality of your fusing, you can use a little bit of steam as well. So you can see now I've fused all three pieces, the front waistband, which we have over here, also the two back waistbands, with the straight part being the center back. If you find that after fusing, the fusing has shifted a little bit, just cut off the little bit extra, like this. And this will keep your waistband nice and firm. Now we're ready to pin our darts. You might remember how we put pins into the dart points, the little point of the triangle, and we've snipped here the legs of the dart. So there should be two snips on the border here and pins where the points are. To pin our darts, we will just loosen one of these pins. So you might remember that we've put them in like this so they don't fall out as we're handling the fabric. So you want to loosen this, having the head of the pin on the good side or outside of our fabric. Fold over the fabric and match up the two snips here. We call these snips notches. Place a pin so it doesn't shift. Now you can use your pin as a handle to keep this nice and smooth, because what we want to create is a triangle with a smooth line along here. We don't want the point of the dart ending up here or somewhere behind there. So keeping this pulled and then smoothing it out guarantees that your dart will be very precise. You can put another pin in the middle there to stop it from shifting, and the last pin goes in where we want to have the point of the dart. We've already got this pin in here. However, when we start sewing, if we continue sewing like this, we'll end up with the pin head blocking the needle. So we need to move the pin over onto the other side. Just grab a spare pin, put it in at exactly the same spot, pin in perpendicular at a right angle, and now you can push out the pin that was in there initially, just being careful not to stab yourself. It's very easy to do. Okay, after you've done darts a few times, you might find that you don't need to mark them with tailor's chalk, but if it's your first time sewing a dart, you might find it a little bit less intimidating or easier to take a ruler and a bit of tailor's chalk. In a pinch, you could use some soap that you've sharpened a little bit with a knife if you don't have tailor's chalk. So lay out your ruler from the leg of your dart to meet the point of your dart, which is marked by the last pin, and then go along and mark your dart. So now all you have to do is sew on this clear line. Very easy and simple. Okay, so our next step will be to set up the sewing machine and sew it. Our darts are marked and ready to go. Slide your fabric under the sewing machine. Remember to lift your presser foot. And position the needle over your line there. Lower your presser foot. And if you like, you can lower the needle as well. So what you want to do is sew along this line, meeting at this point. If at some stage you feel confident to sew without marking the dart with tailor's chalk, you can just visualize the straight of the needle meeting the pin there. If you're not sure, you could always use a ruler and line it up, so then you know that you're straight on. Okay. For now we're concentrating on the line of the tailor's chalk. So remember to use a straight stitch. I'm using this stitch with a needle in the middle, and set the right stitch length and width. So for regular fabric I want to use between 2 and 2.5. If I was using a thicker denim, I would perhaps use 2.6, 2.7. Something a little bit more delicate like silk, I would use a 1.8. Okay, turn on your machine if you haven't done so already. And to start sewing the dart, you want to sew forward a couple and back stitch. You can back stitch to the end and then continue sewing. Take out your pins as you go. Now when you get to the end, we're nearly at the end, I like to leave the pin in just to the last moment because it gets a little bit hard seeing the line, and I do want to make sure that I end right at that point. You can lower the needle, take out your pin just before you get there. Now in the industrial method, what we would do is we'd go forward and then we'd backstitch within the, rather than backstitching on the line that we've just sewn, backstitching within that that triangle that we've created. But for the home sewer, I actually recommend the couture method. So right over the edge of the fabric. The reason why you want to sew right over the edge of the fabric is that if you stop even a stitch before the end, you will create a little bubble and it won't look quite nice. If you sew right over the edge, your dart will sit nice and smooth. Then take up your presser foot, take out the thread, and now don't cut it right there, because remember we haven't backstitched. Leave enough thread so that you can tie 3 knots. Clip your thread on both ends. And your dart is sewn. The reason why we want to tie these 3 knots is just it reduces the bulk. So once this is ironed, you will see this will be a beautiful straight line without any bubbles or bulk showing. I'm going to repeat that just you can see it again. So we lost a pin here, so I'm going to show you on this one. So we loosen the pin, fold it over. Remember you can use the pin as a handle. Match up the points of the legs of the dart, your notches, keeping your fabric flat. Put in another pin in between here. And the last one where the point of the dart is. Then remove the initial pin. Grab a ruler. Attach the ruler to the notches here and to the point, and use your tailor's chalk or soap, whichever you're using, and draw in a line. Okay. Place your fabric under the sewing machine. Go a couple forward, back stitch at the end. Take out your pins as you go. sew up very close to the end and take your last pin out last moment. So right over this edge of the dart by one stitch, two at the most. Take out your thread, clip it with enough thread to tie a triple knot. One, two, and three. Trim close to your knot. And you've sewn it out. Pretty simple. So if you, just to mention it, if you were doing the back stitching, because you just want to get it done very quickly, where you would want to back stitch, rather than stitching on this stitching line here, you would go over and then back stitch right on this triangle here to reduce bulk. Okay, I'm going to sew up the last darts, and then I'm going to show you how to iron them. Okay, we have now finished sewing all the darts, and I would like to show you how to iron them so the points look nice and neat. Come on over to the ironing board. So here are my darts sewn, and see how I've tied the knots. What I want to do now is put the wrong side down with the right side down with the wrong side facing up. And for clothing, darts are always ironed towards the center of the bottle, but for clothing, darts are always ironed towards the center of the body if they are in a vertical position. Alternatively, if they are in the horizontal position, they are ironed down. So this is our center front. What we want to do is take our iron and starting from the outside of the dart, you want to iron with the tip of the iron to the dart point, keeping this nice and taut. Because remember, the darts are creating a three-dimensional shape, a curve, such as here for our tummies and bottoms, or in the tops often for the bust. So if you needed to smooth it out, just make sure you move your iron along like this. Okay, the same thing here. You might need a little bit of steam if your fabric, like mine, doesn't hold its shape that well. Now I just want to show you what happens if I was just ironing this like this without holding it taut. So if you look on the other side, you can see what my dart looks like now. Whereas these ones, I've held it nice and taut, so you can see how it's nice and straight. So the same on the other side. And here my dart's ready to go. I've also done the ones on the other side. Notice how on the back piece you will usually have one dart that is longer. That is because we're usually curvier around our back side than we are in our front. So we need a bigger curve and a longer dart. Okay, now we're ready to sew up our skirt.